Welcome back, everyone. This is TSSA Talks. This is Brian Johnson. I'm coming to you live again from the exit in. It won't be live to you. You're going to probably see this on our YouTube channel. But we're recording this live, so Warren's smile over there on the other side of the screen is very genuine. We're again joined by Warren Austin, who is one of our board members. He's our Northeastern District Director for Tennessee State Soccer Association. We are thrilled to be here in partnership with Tennessee State Soccer Association and the Exit In. This is a historic venue here in Nashville that has, again, suffered greatly, much like nonprofit soccer associations have during the pandemic. But we're really excited to partner with them to get to utilize their facility, to get to tell some stories and start some conversations, hopefully. So as we come into part two here, Warren, where we left off before, you have been introduced to the game. You've had a great experience. You played through college. You know, you've now moved on to your life as a professional. You've been very adamant about your desire, your calling, your passion to give back to the game of soccer. It's been good to you. You're being good back to it. And so you're here as a young professional back in the Tri-Cities area in Tennessee and Virginia. You're giving back and volunteering at the boys club. You're in soccer refereeing, you're soccer coaching. You're giving back to our game. So what I'd like you to do now is help take us from that point up to the point where you became one of our board members, and now in your current role, one of the things you do in soccer is serve as one of the board members for Tennessee State Soccer Association. So let's start back again. Take me kind of on that journey.
Okay, I'll start about where I got into coaching my son's team. Because at that point, I had moved to Bristol and living in Kingsport.
Okay, so you guys have left the Bristol, Virginia, and Tennessee area, and you moved to Kingsport now. And so your son, how old's he when you start coaching him?
He is 4, so he's like U4 coaching at the rec level.
So you're there in the local Kingsport League?
Yes. At that time, it was HVFC, Holston Valley Football Club. It's changed names since then. But he played all the way up through high school and even at the collegiate level. But I coached his team up until he was a U13. I was the head coach of that group of boys. And then I became the assistant coach after that. And mainly because I felt like they needed to hear a different voice. They'd probably gotten a little too comfortable with me at that point.
That can happen. I've got a few of my former players that I probably coached too long that I hope will come and watch this series, and I know they'll be nodding along now. After 4 or 5 years, I'd set the first 2 cones down. They'd be like, I know what he's going to do now. So there is something about when they've heard one voice for a long period of time, no matter how good that voice is, they do need to hear another voice. And kudos to you for understanding that and getting ahead of the curve. Who did you bring in to add to the coaching staff to become the head coach when you became the assistant coach?
The first one was, actually, he coached him all the way up through U18. He was a former high school coach that was just getting into, from a former high school player, but he was just getting into coaching at the club level. But he went through all of the licensing and got his, I believe he got his C license, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow. And
at the time, I felt like he would good with the X's and O's of the game, but I felt like where I could mentor him at was dealing with the off-field issues or with the parents. I was probably in a better position to help him in that area, and that combination really worked very well for this group of boys and the parents.
Man, Warren, that is a great word you use. I wish that's something I hope that we can bring as a part of these conversations in the future. But mentoring is such a huge word. How we can mentor coaches. Hopefully these conversations will lead people to think, wow, I could still be involved in soccer. I don't have to go and get national level licenses. I don't have to go and dedicate my entire life and my livelihood to soccer. I could still find a way to be involved, and mentoring is such a great way. So you took a young man who wanted to pursue some level of a career in soccer, and you were able to mentor him to really help him learn where some of, just traditionally as a young kid, right out of high school, right out of college, you'd have a hard time potentially dealing with adults as peers as opposed to, authority figures from above. What were some of the things you guys were able to kind of learn from each other through that relationship?
For me, it was how to take a back seat and and not interfere with the way he wanted to run practices. Learning how to learn and listen, and not always be the vocal person on the field. Uh, and just learning, how to be a better coach and mentor to someone. Um, telling them the pros and cons of maybe what he's doing and how it may be perceived from either the players or the parents, because his style was different from mine. And parents who normally will come and sit on the sideline during practice and watch and watch the session, and it was totally different than what I did, and they felt like the kids weren't growing initially, even though I knew they were. It's just that they had moved from an 8v8 up to 11v11, and everything has just changed. And I said, we're getting at the point of tactics now, and not necessarily all of the ball skills stuff that we did at the earlier ages. And but it took him a while, I think, to feel comfortable that he is. They are learning and growing, and I think as long as I was there, they still felt somewhat comfortable with him. It took them a couple of years, but they eventually, I think, accepted him as the next coach for that team, that group of boys.
But that group of boys, and so it sounds like there were several of them, not just your son, that you started with early on in recreational soccer, made the transition to competitive soccer, and then the transition from small-sided to 11-a-side to full-sided play. But then they had a consistent voice in you throughout that journey, even as a head coach and then as an assistant coach. And then they had a consistent voice with him. At U13, he started working with them at the transition to 11-a-side. And do I understand right? He continued with you guys working together all the way through U18.
That's correct.
Wow.
It was I want to say, a unique group of kids and parents. The parents were very supportive of me as a coach and what I was, and trusted me, with their kids. But by them staying together for so long, they became a very good group of players.
I bet.
Eventually went on and won the President's Cup and went out to Iowa and played in the Nationals out there.
Wow.
Yeah.
We were the President's Cup champions for Tennessee and went and competed at the regional championships.
Correct.
That would have been in Iowa. That would have been across multiple regions. So yeah.
Yeah.
They really went a long way. That's incredible. That's great, Warren. So, and did those boys, have they continued to be involved in the game? How old's your son now?
He is 25, going on 25. He will be, he is 25. Yeah.
So did any of those guys, have they continued to be involved in the game? Any of those players, to the best of your knowledge?
At least a lot of them that went on to college played either intramurals. We had four others that played at the collegiate level. Two of them as a walk-on at ETSU. Mm-hmm. My son played at ETSU under a scholarship, and then we had one player who went on to play for Massage College, and I think that was it.
From a small-ish town of Kingsport, for a team that came through and stayed together the long way. I mean, that's a lot of kids that have moved on to play at the next level. That's something to really be proud of. I'm sure you are proud of it, and you should be.
Yeah, I am. And I've got one of them, our keeper. He had opportunity to go play for NYU, and but wow. he decided to not play at the collegiate level and went on to Clemson. He went to play some intramural 1 year at Clemson, but now he's in med school.
but these are relationships you continue to have with your son's friends, with these kids who, I mean, again, that's a consistent influence over the course of their entire adolescence that they can look back on, and having that kind of consistency and a positive role model in their lives that impacted kids. Yeah, I'm sure you're going to start to see before long a lot of birth announcements and a lot of wedding invitations and those kind of things with those guys, because you really did play an impactful role with them for a long period of time.
I still see some of them, here and there around town when they're in town if they've moved away. A lot of the parents I still see and talk to and check up on how they're doing. But I think as a coach, um, your role is important not only in teaching them the game of soccer, but teaching them life lessons, because that's what I got out of the sport. And I feel like that that is how you measure your success with the kids is how do they react to you outside of the game, outside of practice. And probably one thing I'm probably the most proud of with that group of boys is many of them would come back later and ask me if I would write a letter of recommendation or be a reference for them. And they've most of them have been very successful, since the game. You got one and son who's going to be a physical therapist here in a couple more months. One is in dental school, one is in med school. I was trying to think of one is in logistics for Amazon. And
I mean, Warren, at the end of the day, you helped to grow, and their parents and them, but you helped to grow some excellent young men who are now a credit to their community, they're a credit to their families, they're a credit to our game, and soccer became a part of their journey towards being those terrific young men that you're really proud to still be associated for. And those are kids who all came through and played in Tennessee State Soccer Association. We're all proud of those kids. Hopefully they'll take and be inspired like you were by somebody who brought you to the game. Hopefully at some point in their journey, they'll find a way to find that inspiration and find ways to give back, whether it's coaching their own kids or refereeing or find a way, or just being a fan. Having more people who are a fan of the game and feel a love for it. And clearly you helped to foster that in those boys. So thank you for what you've done.
No, thank you.
So from there, you've gone on. So shortly after those boys graduated, you transitioned over and became a member of our board of directors. How has that journey been for you? What are the positive or challenging experiences you've had serving as a member of our board?
It was probably a couple. I've been on the board, I'm trying to think now, 4 years, maybe 4 or 5 years. By nature, I'm a quiet person. I don't speak a lot.
I can confirm that. This is the most I've ever heard you talk, and I'm excited about it.
But I listen. I'm a good listener, and I'll speak up when needed, and if I think it's important for me to. So that's probably most difficult part of being on the board for me is I'm not as vocal as all the other board, not to say all of them, but some board members. But I really appreciate their viewpoint and hearing what they have to say, because almost every one of them background is different than mine. Mm-hmm. The area that they're serving, out in the Memphis, West Tennessee, or Middle Tennessee, or down in the Chattanooga area, everyone's community is different, and so hearing some of the struggles and things that they go through has been very helpful for me. Even though it's coming from a small district, it's I've been able to learn some things that they're doing and be able to apply it into my district.
We're stronger together. I think we're greater. I think of that the same way about the staff. We're better than the sum of our parts when you add everybody together. And I feel like, I think our board has really been transformed by some of the hard work you guys have put in to define a mission, to define a vision, to help us live by the values of Tennessee State Soccer Association. It's not just, hey, let's wake up every day and let's try to do some good soccer. It's more than that. And it's taken a lot of work and hard work. And before I was in my role where I worked in our clubs and in our state in soccer in a different way, I didn't see or perceive our board in a way that I have. Part of that's a change in my perspective, but part of it is and I want to make sure there's a recognition for the hard work you guys, ladies and gentlemen, have put in to help to continue to move things forward. One of the things you said there, Warren, that's so impactful to me is you said, and it's very true, you are soft-spoken, but when something needs to be said, you're not afraid to stand up and speak about it. And so in that context, I want to ask you, there's been a lot that's gone on in our world as we've been dealing with this pandemic, but there's also a lot that's gone on in our world as it pertains to social justice, to equality, to the role and the places we all find ourselves in. And in some cases, those conversations come back to race. I think you share an interesting perspective as not just a black man working in soccer, but as a black man who, as a family member, very close family member, in this case, your brother, who's a police officer. And so I think, again, part of this conversation series is potentially having conversations that are not easy to have. And that's what we want to do, is to shine a light and to bring a conversation to these things. So could you share for a couple minutes as we wrap up part 2, and we'll take as much time as you'd like to go down this path, help us understand your perspective as a black man in soccer and outside of soccer, with a brother who's in law enforcement, and with all that's gone on regarding social justice and racial inequality, not just lately, but maybe more on the forefront of the common consciousness lately.
I think all of the injustice kind of blew up with the George Floyd death, and seeing what happened there with him and the officers involved. I think that it painted a picture that all police or law enforcement are that way, that they're corrupt or they're biased against a particular group, and in this case, Blacks or African American. And having a brother who's actually he's now the chief of police in Bristol.
He's in a leadership role, not just a law enforcement officer, but in a leadership role.
Right. Yes. But so I know that not all police or law enforcement are corrupt or targeting anyone, and you hate to see the news media paint that picture as if everyone is like that, and it puts them in a bad position of having to defend themselves. They have to worry about their families. And in the past, you never had that have to worry about anything like that. An officer could do his job and not have to worry about it. Someone setting him up or setting her up. When they make a 911 call, and so I think the media has played a big part in how we're portraying police officers. And I think there's been some organizations that I'm particularly not fond of, but I think has also painted a bad picture. I don't think Black Lives Matter has painted a good picture of society, our society. They've made it seem like all of America is racist, and that's not what I believe, and I don't think most Americans believe that. But I think what I've always said is, when you jump on that bandwagon of Black Lives Matter or any other group like that, make sure you do your homework and understand, the background of that particular organization. Because I think if people actually did some research work and understood what the founders want and what they're pushing, their agenda, they probably wouldn't be walking around with the BLM logo, face mask or flags or whatever, posters. So I think a lot of communities and protesters out there have marching and protesting under the flag of Black Lives Matter, but they don't fully understand what that organization is. And I think they for some good protesting rightfully, I think, some issues that need to be corrected in America. But I think you can accomplish that in other ways. I don't think you accomplish it by kneeling at the national anthem at a sporting event. I think we're all, if you hear or at an event, and when that national anthem is playing, I've always grew up understanding that, I am an American, and what it stands for, the flag stands for, and the people and lives that have been lost fighting for their freedom and to fly that flag. So
that's a lot, Warren. I know that strikes very near and dear to your heart. I think it's a challenge in these times to try to understand where that balance comes between fighting against things that clearly appear to be unequal and clearly appear to be unfair, but fighting for it in a way that can be heard and can be impactful, but also doesn't distract from the overall goals or mission. It's a real delicate balance for folks to try to find. I certainly appreciate your perspective. I'm not asking you for mine, I'm asking you from yours. And I think you really did a great job of explaining why you feel the way you feel. And so I hope that'll allow people to take that in and process again as we try to have conversations and try to see how we can help move all of these movements forward. Because I don't know too many people that are pro inequality. I feel like everybody is very, at least outwardly, and at least everybody I want to be associated with wants there to be equality. How we get there, maybe there's a lot of different journeys and a lot of different paths. And I really appreciate you sharing your perspective because it's very valuable and very valued.
Yeah, I think today's society or the expectation is to let the people know how you where you stand on these inequality issues. Mm-hmm. And I think it's in every organization or company. I think it starts at the top. If you see that your leaders are supportive of it, then you're more likely to fall in line with it. In our company, our CEO has been very supportive. He came out and spoke about the issues, and so I think everyone at our company feels comfortable. I shouldn't say they feel comfortable, but they at least know that the company where they stand and where our upper management stands. And I think it applies even at soccer clubs and if you're president of your club, where does he stand, or your board, where do they stand? And same thing with Tennessee soccer. I think the same thing applies. Is your president and the staff, where do they stand on these issues?
Mm-hmm. Just one little follow-up, Warren, and then we're going to take a little break here, wrap up Series 2. I'm really excited to come back and talk to you for the third part of the interview about what your hopes and dreams are and what you'd like to see us accomplish in the future. So I want to talk about the current, and I think it would be naive not to talk about it, but let's also talk about the future. Last thing to wrap up part 2. I think one of the things that has come over, and you mentioned George Floyd, you brought into the conversation. I'm glad that you did. I think it's relevant. One of the parts of the conversation that I've had and we've heard is, for a long time, perhaps just not being a racist was enough, but that now being anti-racist is sort of a minimum level of decency that we want people to jump over. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. These are words that have been shared with me. I'd like to hear maybe your take on that as we wrap up part 2 of our interview.
Yeah, I think it kind of falls into a category of unconscious bias, I guess. You're not a racist, and sometimes you do things to make sure that people don't preach into that category. And because I think with all the social media that we have, outlets that we have today, if someone tags you as a racist, it is very difficult to shake that tag off of you, even though it may not be true. that's I think we see that a lot nowadays. They've thrown the term around so much that I think it has lost its true meaning of what a racist may be. And I don't know if it'll ever come back because they have used it so loosely and redefined it in today's society.
Your opinion is very valued and respected, Warren. So thank you for sharing that with us. So we're going to take a little break here. The end of part 2. Again, this is TSSA Talks. We're coming to you live from the Exit In as a partnership between the Exit In and Tennessee State Soccer Association. We're pleased to have Warren Austin with us. Please come back and join us for part 3 of the interview where we talk with Warren about the future of soccer here in Tennessee and across our country. We'll be right back.